Tonight on Business Live, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta leaves Ghana for debt restructuring negotiations with China's government races against time to secure an IMF program. Also, former president of the Ghana Association of Banks, Alhassan Andani, describes the consistent fall in interest rates as welcoming, indicating it is key to scaling back lending rates.
Drag down the Ghana reference rate and improve the lending rates to enterprises.
Plus, Development Bank Ghana to support agribusiness sector with $700 million. Move expected to enhance the country's food security efforts.
Ghana, we have the arable land, we have the resources, and there's no need for Ghana to be importing $600 million worth of chicken every year. There's no need for Ghana to be importing about $1 billion of rice every year. These are things that we can do because this will generate the jobs that we are looking for.
We have these stories and more coming up shortly. I'm Beverly Broohm. Please stay. Thanks for staying with us. We go into details now, and the former president of the Ghana Association of Banks, Alhassan Andani, has described the falling spree of interest rates as welcoming. This comes after interest rates fell once again as government treasury bills were oversubscribed by about 40.3% to the tune of 3.89 billion cedis. Speaking to Joy Business at the Maxwell Investment Group Business Forum, Mr. Andani said this is key to support the private sector through scaling back lending rates.
Demand for the 91-day T-bill is high, pushing the yield down. This follows the successful completion of the domestic debt exchange program, with interest rates on the money market witnessing a significant fall. Meanwhile, a former president of the Ghana Association of Banks, Alhassan Andani, said this is necessary to aid businesses access credit from banks, hence aiding in the expansion of their operations.
Well, it just means improvements, not just in the government's own debt borrowing burden, but also it will scale back the aggregate lending rate. The T-bill rate is part of the formula that determines lending rates of banks, or what we call the Ghana reference rate. Now, for me, the T-bill rate coming down is just a natural thing to do because Ghana government could not, offer itself to be paying 35% on its own currency, and therefore it's only appropriate that we determine a rate that is much more sustainable. But I think the downward trend is very welcome. It will drag down the Ghana reference rate and improve the lending rates to enterprises. Otherwise, with a T-bill of 35% and inflation at wherever, and the monetary policy rate, I just could not see how the private sector could borrow and make money out of borrowed funds. Well, the Bank of Ghana has, their inflation targeting is a policy, and therefore they have to reflect what true inflation is. But there are other factors, the demand and use for money. They have to target whatever their inflation is.
Speaking at the event, Chief Executive Officer for the Maxwell Investment Group, Maxwell Ampofo, entreated young people to explore various opportunities in their quest to start their businesses.
We are here to find solutions, seize opportunities that lie amidst these challenges. There are opportunities within all of these challenges, and our focus is on how we, as a community can harness our strengths, our resources, and the creativity to build resilience and foster growth in the face of adversity. This forum, organized by Maxwell Investments Group in collaboration with the Zongo and Inner Cities Development Secretariat under the Office of the President of Ghana, is a testament to our commitment to fostering a spirit of collaboration, a spirit of innovation all across board, not just from one sector, but all across board. Let us seize the opportunities laid for today and together chart a path towards a better, more resilient, more prosperous future for Zongo and inner cities, and by extension, the whole country.
The MIG Business Forum aims to engage key players cutting across various sectors and the general population in a solution-oriented approach to support businesses. James Ishen's reports for Joy Business.
Now, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has left Ghana to finalize debt restructuring negotiations with China. Joy Business understands that the minister left Accra over the weekend via Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where he will be participating in another high-level engagement before moving to China. My colleague George Riafe has more.
Joy Business understands that Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is currently in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where he is attending the UNECA High-Level Ministers Meeting on Global Financial Architecture. After this meeting, the minister is expected to leave for China to begin official negotiations this Wednesday. In that country, the engagement will primarily focus on restructuring about $1.7 billion debt and seeking financial assurance that China will fully participate in Ghana's program with the IMF. Government is hopeful that it will be able to reach a deal with China, a move that could fast-track current negotiations with the IMF for a board approval of its program. The engagement, which should have taken place earlier this month, was postponed to ending due to the fact that it clashed with the National People's Congress of China's annual meeting. However, analysts are worried that this engagement will be a difficult one, as China traditionally doesn't cancel debts, but more of reprofiling. Government is working to secure an IMF board approval for its economic program by the end of this month. But some industry watchers doubt that will be possible. They argue that Ghana can secure a deal in the second quarter of this.
Now joining us on Zoom with a look ahead is Williams Prepra, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University. Thank you so much, Mr. Prepra, for your time. What will these talks entail once the Finance Minister makes it to China?
Good evening and thank you for calling me. So since 2000, China has now bought into the idea of restructuring some debt for some countries. China has about three main models for debt restructuring. The first one that they look out for is reprofiling the debt service payments within the original maturity period. Or China may decide to give you a short-term maturity extension that ranks from 3 to 7 years, or a long-term maturity extension that goes for 10 to 20 years. And the third one is a maturity extension and then also interest rate reduction. So these four options are what the finance minister may have to be negotiating with the Chinese on them. In history, in 2000, in the year 2002, China granted Cameroon and Zimbabwe in 2007, 2010, 2012, some short-term maturity extension on their loan repayment from 3 to 7 years. And when it comes to maturity extension and interest repayment and reduction, China granted Zimbabwe when they were in dire need of such facilities in 2003 and 2004, and Seychelles in 2011. Looking at the Ghana's current situation, and what possibly the minister may have to be working towards is having a discussion with the Chinese to grant Ghana a maturity extension and again an interest rate reduction. We know the Chinese will not give us a cancellation of our debt, and in that case, Ghana may be able to get about 10 years or 20 years in terms of repayment on the 1.7 billion which is due. And this will really have a major reduction in our yearly interest payment. The other alternative is that because the minister on our local debt restructuring approach programmed a 5-year plan, Chinese will also be looking at the short-term maturity extension by granting Ghana maybe a 3 to 7 year extension. That is what they gave to Cameroon and Zimbabwe and Niger in 2018.
But do you think? No, but do you think that any fruitful outcome will come from this?
I mean, it's possible because the Chinese, for the countries that I've mentioned, they went through similar situations like us. If you look at Zimbabwe, they went into even a worse situation, and the Chinese came to their aid. So that possibility is there. We must have to find a way to negotiate with China very well in terms of which angle we make our argument from. I'm sure the Chinese are ready to do a debt restructuring, but Ghana will possibly not get a debt cancellation. But when they restructure the debt, it will reduce your interest payment, and they will also give Ghana a long-term payment, years to make the payment. In that effect, our yearly interest payments on our budget will reduce.
And Professor, analysts are casting doubts about a government's March target. What do you make of it? Because today is the 20th, and if we are going to meet that target, we should be seeing some signals, but it looks like we are not seeing anything. Do you think that we can make it?
For me, we will not be able to get this agreement through end of March. The government will, per the IMF agreement, government needed to pass some 3 major taxes, which has not even been laid in Parliament for consideration and approval, which is also a condition for the revenue generation. This Chinese arrangement is also about to start. So putting the situations together, it is not possible unless IMF on their own decide to grant Ghana a favor, and looking at our situation, will say we want to give you some funds in advance. They call it credit in advance to manage your operations until we finalize.
So when are you looking at most likely for us getting a deal? I
mean, the IMF meets in the second quarter, so possibly Ghana documents, if you ask me, will be ready somewhere in April, between April and May, and that is when we'll be able to table a full dossier to IMF to consider our situation.
All right. So the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana will begin its meeting this week to review the economy. The last time the committee increased the policy rate by 100 basis points to 28%. What do you expect them to do this time around?
I mean, we've seen a slight reduction in inflation rate, which is a major factor they consider in the monetary policy rate. We have also noticed a sharp drop in the Treasury bill rate from that 35% to around 19%. So the monetary policy will be in a dilemma to whether to on the line of the sharp drop in Treasury bill rate, which is not really a realistic one as per what we normally know in finance and in economics. So for me, my guess is that they may want to play a safe a policy with a weight attitude by maintaining the 28% and see what will happen in the next quarter before they'll be able to take a major decision in reducing the monetary policy rate. Even if they will want to reduce it, it will be only about 100 basis points to about 27%.
Thank you so much, Professor Williams Pepper. He's the Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University. Now, away from that, the Development Bank Ghana has set aside $700 million to support entrepreneurs in the food value chain. Vice President Research at the bank, Kwabena Opuni-Frimpong, says the support is part of strategies to increase food production for improved food security in Ghana. Through the participation of financial institutions, the bank will provide medium to long-term financing to entrepreneurs in the food value chain. The following report has more.
The World Bank has ranked Ghana as the country with the highest food prices in sub-Sahara Africa. To address the challenges, selected cash crops like maize, soya, poultry and rice have been prioritized. Vice President of Research at the Development Bank Ghana, Kwabena Opuni Frimpong, says the bank is addressing the challenge through sustainable agricultural financing, policy and regulatory reforms.
Our Development Bank Ghana will provide long-term financing of 3 to 15 years, to the PFIs. The PFIs are participating financial institutions. We are a wholesale bank, so we don't lend directly. Our funds go to the PFIs and who will then on lend to the farmers. Ghana, we have the arable land, we have the resources, and there's no need for Ghana to be importing $600 million worth of chicken every year. There's no need for Ghana to be importing about $1 billion of rice every year. These are things that we can do because this will generate the jobs that we are looking for. It will provide, women, like women-headed households, to create wealth for themselves and for their families.
To actualize this, the bank met some poultry farmers in Kumasi to better appreciate their challenges. Medium to long-term financing for agribusiness has been the ban for many entrepreneurs in the food value chain. Many businesses are on the knees because banks avoid the risk in long-term financing, especially in agribusinesses. The chief of party for Feed the Future Ghana Mobilizing Finance in Agriculture Activity, Dr. Victor Enti, emphasized the importance of building capacity of the financial institutions to understand the dynamics of the entrepreneurs in the food value chain.
It's an activity that seeks to facilitate over $261 million in 7 value chains, and these are maize, soy, groundnut, cowpea, mango, cashew, and then shea. As of now, we facilitated approximately $200 million into these 7 value chains. So how we arrived at this point was that we build capacity of the financial institutions for them to understand the dynamics of these value chains. We also train transaction advisors that we pay for them to assist these value chain actors in these 7 value chains, for them to assess finance, to enhance their production and other activities.
A poultry farmer, Alexander Kwekun-Kansa, says the government's food policies have failed woefully to support poultry farmers to feed the country.
The government continues to propagate this propaganda that he's out there to support the poultry farmer to produce at his or her maximum capacity. Yet the basic infrastructure like access to road, water, electricity that is required for this high capacity production in our poultry farms are non-existent. If you come to my poultry farm, for example, I'm saddled with building my own road that leads to the poultry farm. I have to provide my own electricity using solar systems. I have to find my own means of water. And these things are an impediment in our way. It doesn't help you to achieve your goals. We have set up about 100,000 capacity building, yet as I speak to you, we have nothing. And the only reason we have nothing is because there is no funding available from the government.
For Joy News, Ewuku Malik's report read to you.
Now, all oil marketing companies in Ghana now participate in the government's Gold for Oil program. This was after the National Petroleum Authority reviewed the requirements needed for the oil firms to participate in the program. The authority, however, maintains that these companies must be in good standing with the National Petroleum Authority and the Ghana Revenue Authority. They must also be willing to pass on the benefits to consumers. Let us now go on Zoom and speak to the head of economic regulations at the National Petroleum Authority, Abbas Ibrahim Tasunti. Thank you so much, sir, for your time here. What has influenced this move by the NPA in terms of reviewing the requirement for the Gold for Oil program?
Right, thank you very much. You remember when the program started in January, we mentioned that the criteria that had been set was going to be revised as more volumes of products are imported. The first criteria had to be determined because at the time, the volumes were not significant for it to be spread thinly among so many oil marketing companies. And therefore, it was very important that we had a criteria that was going to ensure that the volumes at the time was going to be felt, or the impact of the price at the time was going to be felt at the pump. And that's how come we came up with the very first criteria that said we're looking at oil marketing companies that were within the top 25 market share with at least 45 retail outlets. Subsequent to that, we reviewed it again as more volumes were imported. And at this time around, we increased it to top 40, OMCs within the top 40 of market share with at least 10 oil marketing companies. But if you've been following, you notice that more cargoes have been imported under the program. And therefore, there's no need to now have a criteria that limits the number of marketing companies. And as we speak now, we've opened it up to all oil marketing companies. Like you mentioned, the only criteria we are looking at now is that you must be in good standing. You shouldn't be a company that's indebted to either the National Petroleum Authority in terms of payment of license fees or other statutory margins, or a company that has not paid your tax returns to the Ghana Revenue Authority. So once you are in good standing, you qualify to supply products under the program.
But are you struggling to get the over 100 oil marketing companies to sign up?
Okay, so let me clarify that it is not for the National Petroleum Authority to look for the OMCs to buy the product. Okay. These are commercial transactions. And the BDCs, after they bought the product from BOST, are required to sell it to oil marketing companies based on their own commercial terms as well. So they would look for oil marketing companies that are able to pay them based on the commercial terms they have. Let me mention that indeed the request for us to even increase the criteria to include more oil marketing companies came from the BDCs themselves. And therefore, as we speak, as of today, we have over 40 oil marketing companies that have been cleared to participate. These OMCs, these BDCs, we informed them last week that if they have any oil marketing company that they would like to sell to, all they have to do is just inform the authority, and we clear them, and then they can participate. So on a daily basis, even today, we've had OMCs that have been submitted to us that have been cleared to participate. So this is done on a daily basis, and the numbers keep increasing. So it is not as if MPA is going out to look for oil marketing companies to participate.
Mr. Tasunti, please hold on for me and let me bring in the conversation Dr. Yusuf Sulemana, who is an energy specialist. Dr. Yusuf Sulemana, do you hold the view that the decision to now include oil marketing companies in the Gold for Oil policy is a good move?
Yeah, thank you very much, Beverly, and then good afternoon to you and the cherished viewers across the globe, and then to Abbas also. Yeah, so earlier on when they made the announcement, I took exceptions to that. I wasn't comfortable with that, in the sense that, in fact, it was one of the few decisions I crossed MPA that I wasn't comfortable. And my reason was simple, that we are in to make the policy to impact almost everybody. Well, the explanation given was that they rather wanted to maximize the impact. That was why they did that. But I felt that every single OMC is important, regardless of the location. Maybe one OMC with even a single outlet, the strategic location of that OMC will impact the populace there more than those with the bigger, those with the highest, market share. So I welcome the decision to include all oil marketing companies. I think it's a prudent one. And for fairness, I think that's the way to go. Other than that, if you had hold on to that particular trajectory of limiting some OMCs based on their market share, then we'll crowd out some people. A policy that we're seeking to bring everybody involved, then we'll end up bringing, clauses that will end up taking some people out. That was quite unfortunate. So I think the revision is welcome and it's a prudent one to do. Yeah.
But do you think that the initial reason is more valid?
No, it wasn't. Like I said, I don't think it was valid.
Okay.
Earlier on, what I said when when they mentioned that, what I said was, OMC should rather be targeted with respect to this policy based on their standing. If I'm a single OMC and I pay my dues, I'm not owing GRA, I'm not owing the regulator. I don't think it's fair for me not to be supplied a potential cheaper petroleum products if it is in the market. So I think the earlier decision wasn't that much prudent, of course, regardless of the explanation that was given. I think this later decision is more pragmatic, and I think and I welcome that one. So yes, the earlier one was null and void, and I think it wasn't good. Yeah.
Let me come back to you, Mr. Tasunti. Can you help us with some numbers in terms of how this gold for oil program is impacting on prices? Because some are still questioning the impact on petroleum prices.
Okay, thank you very much. So with regards to impact, I think one significant impact we have seen is that now we are seeing the market prices from the BDCs coming very close or even matching the gold for oil price. Let me give you an example. In the second window of January, when the first cargo of gold for oil came, the diesel cargo, we did our market analysis as we always do, to always have an idea of what goes into the pricing of the BDCs compared to the gold for oil. And if you remember at the time, when the gold for oil came, the price disparity at the time, the gold for oil diesel was selling at about 10.8 cedis per liter, whilst on the market, the XRF price for the same product was about 12 cedis per liter. So there's a huge gap. And at the time, based on analysis, we were seeing the supplies premium or the numbers that went to the BDC's pricing, averaging about $136 for diesel at the time. And for petrol, it was about $260 per metric ton, which was quite high at the time. But as we speak now, the gold for oil has had an impact in the sense that it has brought down the market prices to match G for O. And based on this same analysis that we do for every window, we are seeing that the supplies premium for petrol has now dropped from over $200 per metric ton to about $98 per metric ton, just for the window that just ended. For diesel, we are seeing about $60 per metric ton. It used to be about over $130 per metric ton. So we are seeing a significant impact. So in terms of the price differential between the gold for oil and the market prices, they are very close now. But the premium that we've seen, the impact that we've seen is that the premiums have dropped significantly. And as you would expect, in a free market, you don't control how the BDCs will determine their prices. It's a free market. But the gold for oil has made them come down. I don't think without the gold for oil policy, we would have had such significant reductions on their part. Even though generally the world market price have been falling and the exchange rate has stabilized, which has contributed to the price falls we are seeing at the pump now. Compared to the gold for oil, prices are comparatively cheaper. And actually, this is what we expected, that with the gold for oil coming in with such a competitive price, it was going to move the market and make us see this impact.
Dr. Sulemana, we are pressed for time, but I want to ask you this final question. The NPA boss, Dr. Mustafa Abdul Hamid, has been elected president of the African Refiners and Distributors Association. What are your expectations of him?
Yeah, so, well, I'm not surprised. If you look at our regulator, they have been one of the vibrant regulators within the continent. And so, and other or African Refiners Development Association, Distributors Association, is supposed to champion downstream activities. So if there's any person that can champion such, I think our Dr. Mustafa Hamid could be the right person to do so. But going forward, what I want to urge him, as pragmatic as he is, and I've seen that he brought a lot of changes within NPA, which we always we are happy about. I want to see this association champion more local refineries, because if you look at it, I think they were supposed to. It came like African Refiners Association. It was supposed to champion springing up of refineries within the continent. The way they brought in the distribution aspect of it, the D component of it, I don't want it to start championing, importation of finished product activities. To zero in importation of finished product activities. So going forward, I think our doctor has 2 refineries within his backyard. He should ensure that he uses the leadership, his stewardship to bring talk back to life. He should use his stewardship to ensure that the private refineries that are coming on, all these refineries come back to life. And I think that will help a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Dr. Yusuf Sulemana is energy strategist, as well as head of economic regulations at the National Petroleum Authority, Abbas Ibrahim Tasunti, for your time here. And that's how we end Business Live tonight. For more business news, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. I am Beverly Broohm. Enjoy the rest of our programs.